Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dirt Nap City, the podcast about interesting dead people. How you doing, Kelly?
I'm doing great, man. I am very, very well fed at this point. I've been crunching on an apple, which is now my favorite thing to eat because of all the great facts I read about them. But I've really realized one thing. You have to buy 25% more because they're 25% air.
Yeah. So if you if you're interested in or intrigued about what Kelly's saying, 2 weeks ago we did an episode on Johnny Appleseed. And so this adds to our catalog of quirky Americans, right?
Ooh,
and I think
yeah.
I'll do the same thing today.
You got a quirky American for me?
I do. Now, so far, how many doctors do you think we've talked about on this show? We've talked about 2 or maybe 3. Can you guess which doctors?
Medical doctors?
Either way.
Or I guess Einstein was probably a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. We never covered Dr. Love. Dr.
Hook. We talked about Dr. Hook.
We did talk about the Gentleman Pirate, but not Dr. Hook. I can't think of any other doctors.
We talked about Dr. Seuss.
Oh, yes. A classic. That was one of our first season.
We talked about Dr. Spock.
That's right. I don't think he was a real doctor, though.
No, he was definitely a real doctor. Spock?
Seuss was more of a doctor than Spock. Come on.
What? And Spock was a medical doctor.
Yeah, okay. Who gave bad advice about how to raise children. If you want to know how not to raise your children, go read his book and listen to or just skip it and listen to our podcast about him. But
that wasn't the takeaway I got. But
was the dude who did Pilates, was he a doctor?
No.
Okay.
No. And either was Thomas Edison, either was maybe Tesla. Was Tesla a doctor?
I don't
think
so. Oh, it was like Doctor of Physics or something.
Yeah. And Nostradamus, you may remember, that was a long time ago. But remember, Nostradamus got expelled from medical school.
That's
but then he still everyone called him doctor, and he called himself doctor. But they were putting doctors to death back then, so he was on the DL.
That's right. He's secret doctor. # secret doctor.
Well, I'm going to talk about somebody today that may or may not have been a doctor.
Okay. Is this a may or may not have been a medical doctor, or just
yes? Yes.
Now, wait, are you a doctor?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You're not talking about yourself. Well, you can't do that. So, okay.
Born in 1882, died in rural Indiana. Died in 1968 in Chicago.
Okay.
20th century business icon. Probably one of the pioneers of modern advertising and sales as we think about it. We know him, though, as a doctor. In fact, you probably wouldn't even know his first name. But he may or may not have even been a doctor.
This is like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
May or may not have been a colonel. Wasn't a colonel.
Exactly like that.
So his name was associated with his product or with his business, I guess.
Yeah, you know him as a doctor.
Okay.
Today.
Dr. Scholl's.
You got it.
Did I really?
Dr. Scholl. What do you know about Billy Scholl?
Well, they go in your shoes. He goes in your shoes.
He goes in your shoes.
Well, his pads, his thingies. Yeah. I mean, they are called Dr. Scholl's, and yeah, they're for people with corns and bunions, and
we're going to talk about all
flat feet
that.
And all that stuff.
We're going to get into all of those terms and see what you know about feet. If you're into feet, this is the show for you today. If you are squeamish about feet, this is going to be rough for you. I'll just tell you, because we're going to talk about feet.
Don't be defeated. Listen all the way through. And by the way, if you are into feet, you also want to check out the X-ray shoe fitter episode. Now, I wonder if Dr. Scholl ever used an X-ray shoe fitter.
I was afraid what you were going to say there. If you're into feet, we got not much for you other than the one about the X-ray shoe fitter. which
Yeah.
I still like that episode. That was one of our first dead ends.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to a dead end, by the way, these are the episodes we have in between the episodes about people. They're about things that don't exist. That
Probably like shoe inserts, right?
I think these are pretty. It's a pretty big company still, and he
Really?
does more. They do a lot more than just inserts.
How in the world did I pull that out? I really don't know.
Well, Dr. Scholl is a very famous company that are kind of ubiquitous, right? And you probably even tell me the color of the boxes of Dr.
Are they
Scholl's
blue?
blue and yellow,
Okay. Yeah,
yellow
yeah.
boxes with blue. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Billy Scholl, William Matthias Scholl, or Billy, um, grew up as one of 13 children. His grandfather was a German immigrant and shoemaker.
Oh.
So that's probably where the love for feet started.
Now is that
And
called a
is
cobbler?
probably in Germany. Yeah,
And
probably a
then
cobbler.
they make shoes out of,
Oh
corn
man,
cobs and
you
wood?
can imagine how rough shoes were until about the time we were coming up. I mean, Nikes were invented in the mid 70s, right?
Yeah.
Kind of mass marketed in the late 70s, and we got pretty lucky on the shoe game.
I guess, but, we don't have the benefit of being able to walk around like Johnny Appleseed barefoot, right? Because I mean, let's
Oh,
face
you
it,
think that's a benefit?
we're tenderfoot. Well, have you ever read the book called, it's about the guys who run,
Yep,
ultra marathons with no
yep,
shoes on?
yep,
Supposedly, it's good for you, like,
yep.
to actually
Supposedly,
have your feet touch the earth.
yep. I like a good shoe though. Really
I
like
do
it.
too, I do too, but only because my feet are such babies.
Mm, mm. So, if you can imagine how bad foot technology
Well,
was
yeah, they were
back in
using
the day,
radiation on your feet back then. They
yeah,
were
but even
zapping
before
you.
that, so Billy Scholl, his dad was in the Union Army. Okay, so in the Civil War, fought for the Union, and the Union had the latest technology in footwear. What do you think the latest technology, the state of the art was, like the most technologically advanced development in footwear was during the Civil War?
I'm gonna go with moccasins.
Nope. The Union Army had these, and the Confederacy didn't.
Steel toe,
No, it's much more even simpler than that.
a
They
buckle.
no, they had left and right boots.
Oh, wow,
So the Confederacy did not have this.
wow.
Every shoe was the
They
same,
were
every
all
boot was
left?
the same. In fact, when the Confederacy, after a battle, the Confederacy would take the boots off of the dead Union soldiers and wear them because they were so much more comfortable because there was a right and a left. And they
Yeah,
weren't just one size fits all or one, and they probably didn't even have sizes. They were probably just, all a size 10 or 9 or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and at one time, General Grant actually attributed the Union's edge over the Confederacy on the fact that they had more comfortable boots than the Confederacy.
Wow. Imagine the ingrown toenails that you would get
Oh,
from, too small and only one type, like no left and right.
I mean, I don't think they were all right or all left. They were just all nothing,
They
right?
were
So they didn't they
right, so at
didn't
least
have.
I would have made them all right or all left so that at least one foot would be comfortable, right? This way, it was kind of the worst of both worlds.
But if you knew how to make a right shoe, wouldn't you have made a left shoe also?
You'd think,
Why?
man, but, I have a question for you, though, and this might get a
Sure.
little cringy for some folks, but, have you ever had an ingrown toenail?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ah, that's the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bad.
One of the
We're gonna
most
talk about
one of the most
I want to
painful
get
things
into
ever.
some of those foot maladies here in a minute.
Okay.
Um, but so these things, his grandpa being a shoemaker, his dad being in the Union Army, and hearing these stories about how the reason they won was because
Yeah,
um, they had the right and left foot. That influenced him. He worked in a shoe store growing up,
perfect
and he
storm.
became interested in what we call today podiatry. It wasn't called that back then. It was called um, uh, chiro chiropody. Chiropody.
Chiropody. I
chiropody.
need to go chiropody.
And but because it wasn't really something that in medical school they focused on. They thought at the time that the foot, shoes weren't supposed to be comfortable. That people, if you had bad feet, it wasn't a medical issue. It was just you need to toughen up, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't something that I think people that were into chiropody back then were basically, cutting people's toenails and dealing with corns.
Yeah.
It wasn't really thought of as being a very respected medical thing. Um, but he may or may not have enrolled in medical school around this time when he was working in the shoe store, and we'll talk about all that. But in 1993, there was an article written about some of the great Chicago events that happened in this 20th century. And they talked about Dr. Scholl's, and they had the quotes around the word doctor. And there was a guy in his 80s who had formerly worked in the American Medical Association as director of investigation. And he was reading this article and he thought, that's funny. Wonder why they have quotes around that word. And he kind of started doing some digging and determined that there's a lot of questions around this guy being a doctor. So we're not going to focus too much on the doctor part right now, but really the business part, the sales part, all that savvy, and then we'll revisit the doctor part.
Yeah, it's kind of like Dr. Pepper, right? I mean,
Or Colonel Sanders, like you said.
Just go
Kind
with
of
the
doesn't
goodness.
matter if he was a colonel. That was kind of part of his thing. On the other hand, your love of chicken probably isn't influenced by whether or not he was a colonel. If you're buying products
Health
for
products.
health products for an appendage, you might want to know if the person who's hawking it is actually a doctor or not. And some would say that's quackery.
Quackery. I love it.
So before we get into all that, I want to talk about some foot ailments and see how much you know about some of these foot ailments.
Oh, I'm an expert.
Do you? Do you know what hammer toes are?
Isn't that a type of shark?
Hammer toes. Have you ever heard of hammer toes?
No, never heard of hammer.
You never heard of them? Really?
No, I don't think so.
That's when you have a bend in the middle joint of either your second, third, or fourth toe. It just bends like upward.
Huh.
Okay. So I don't know how many feet you've seen.
That sounds more like a telescope toe or a periscope toe.
I've never heard of that.
Well, if it bends upward, it'd be like a periscope poking out of your
that's
shoe.
Not a thing. But you can imagine if you have that and it's rubbing against your shoe, how irritating that would be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then there's a mallet toe that's related to that, but that's a bend, but it's in a bend in the joint that's right by your toenail. So it just depends on where so if your if your toes don't bend up, then you don't have any of these. But if you have a bend, then you have a hammer toe or a mallet toe.
And everybody visit our website for diagrams. You can we've got a downloadable PDF with photos and diagrams of Alex's toe. Apparently he's got a hammer toe on one side and a whatever it is on the other.
Now you mentioned flat feet a second ago. That's also called fallen arches.
Okay.
You know what that is?
That's a park in Utah National Park.
Do you know what flat feet are, though? Have you ever seen anyone with flat feet?
No.
You've just heard about it, right? You don't have any idea.
Yeah, I thought it was like a detective, or is that a gum foot?
That's a gumshoe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to be talking about gumshoes at all. Other than the gum, that's not true. That gumshoe that worked for the American Medical Association
right.
tried to get to the bottom of this. Yeah, you're right. So flat feet are fallen arches. So you know what an arch is?
Yeah.
An arch is where the tendons of your foot form an arch by pulling tight at your heel, and they pull it so your foot kind of bends.
Arch
right?
support. You need arch support.
And when they don't pull together, there's no arch. And so, like, if you can picture somebody standing, like putting their foot in paint and then putting it on a piece of paper, you'd be able to see your entire foot.
Right. It doesn't have that curved peanut look like it does with an arch.
Right. The foot may still curve, but it doesn't go upward.
I've got good arches. I'm
Do you?
an ex. Yeah. My mom, that was one thing she always bought us shoes with good arch support. That was like a high priority for her.
So some people may be born with a flat feet or they may have developed it through some sort of a condition. But as you may not have heard, like around the Vietnam War time, that flat feet was actually a way to not go you can't go to the military if you have flat feet. You've heard that before, like
Is
in movies.
is that what Trump got out for?
No, he had a bone spur.
Oh, okay.
He had a bone spur, but flat feet was a reason that people about 3% of the population has flat feet because they say that it gives you prolonged pain if you're standing or running or marching. So it could be very painful and cause spine problems.
Oh, yeah. Bad
But so
posture.
flat feet was a reason that a lot of people would give to try to get out if they're getting drafted, for
So they'd have
example.
their
But if
doctor
you
write them a note to say, "Sorry, young Alex Milam has flat feet. He can't
no,
serve."
you probably had to they probably gave you a physical and determined that, like, when you
Ah.
got I don't think you could get a doctor's note saying you had flat feet. They would determine that.
They'd say, "Take off your shoes," and you'd say, "Oh, no way."
Dip them in paint, right.
Yeah.
Do you know what corns are?
It's funny, I just had a conversation about corns recently. It's
This proves that you're an old man.
I was about to say it's something that I was gonna say old people get on their feet, but no, enlighten me as to what a corn is. It's some sort
There's
of a
no one in their 20s that are having conversations about corns unless it's
cornhole.
corn on the cob. Corns are thick skin lesions, kinda like a callus
Okay.
on your toes that are caused by rubbing or pressure from shoes. And actually, corns can be caused by hammer toes.
Oh, they're all related.
They're kind of like calluses, but I think they're thicker
Are
and
they
more
painful?
permanent. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
for sure. Do you know what bunions are?
Another American legend with a ox named Babe, right? And all
Yeah,
of his
Paul
children.
Bunyan.
Yeah.
That would be another character. Paul Bunyan, spelled Bunions.
And he just walks around going, "Ow, ow, ow, my feet. I've got 2 left shoes and a bunion."
Do you know what a bunion is?
No, I'm not really
You've
an
heard of
expert. You
you've heard
called
of
me out.
bunions, right?
Why did you have to out me as not knowing about feet maladies?
But you've heard
I've
about
heard of
bunions,
it.
right?
Yeah, I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not
What
that
do you think
old.
it is? What do you think it is?
It's probably something that happens on your heel maybe because it's on the bun part.
Actually, no, it's a great guess. I don't think any part of the foot is called the bun,
Oh.
but it's a bony bump on the joint of the base of your big toe.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
what
I've seen that. It kinda goes out at a little bit of a severe
exactly,
angle. Okay.
exactly. So it's caused by the bones in the front part of your foot move out of place, and they cause the tip of your big toe to get pulled towards the others, and then it moves the joint out the opposite direction, so it sticks out. So it's it must be awful.
Yeah.
We're not. Hey,
I've seen that before. I have seen that before,
if you're
and I
listening and
didn't
you
know
have
that was called
bunions,
a bunion.
we're
Yeah.
not laughing at you. We feel your pain.
We are.
But
We are.
and then finally, ingrown toenails is
Yes.
when you mentioned before. It's when the side of the toenail grows into the flesh. You
Ah,
can get those, I think, sometimes if you're cutting the toenail
at
and
an
you don't
angle.
and you at an
You're supposed to
angle.
cut it straight.
It's definitely one of the design problems of the human body. One of many, as I might add.
Can can
But
I can I tell you a quick story? I used to
ingrown
get
toenails are the worst.
I used to get them a lot as a kid. I had several. I even had to go to a doctor and have it cut out one time because it was
Mm.
so in there, and I was, just screaming every time you touched it. But at one point, I actually had to have half or maybe my entire toenail removed because
Mm.
of the ingrown toenail. And I don't know, maybe they gave me a local anesthetic down there and ripped it out. I mean, I was probably 12, 13, 10 years old at the time. And what's weird is my toenail grew back, but it grew back all bumpy and like not smooth. Like it
Oh, yeah, on the top.
Yeah, yeah, it grew back all kinda
Yeah.
rough and bumpy and was like that for years, and finally that kind of went away and it got back to normal, but and I haven't.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, yeah, it's very, very weird. Also, another quick little, toenail story while we're on the subject. Um, I used to do a thing with some of my friends. Every New Year's, we would paint our toenails, and whoever had just like all the toenails, but on your big toes, whoever still had toenail polish the latest in the year won. It was like a contest. So, because your toes grow from the back, not like the tip of it doesn't grow. You cut off the tip and then it grows from the back out. So basically um as you go through the year, you'll find that the base of your toenail no longer has polish because it grew out.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
finally you just have this little sliver like a moon at the end of your toenail, and we would, like every month we would have a little meetup and see who still had a sliver of
Who did this? You and all your punk rock friends?
me and all my punk rock friends, yes. It was very punk rock.
I never got into this.
Yeah, hey, you want I think we should do it this year. I think we next time we get together, you, me, Al, Chris, we'll all paint our toenails and we'll see who's can last the longest.
We'll make it a Patreon contest.
Right, right. The winner will get live updates. Our Patreons.
So if you fast forwarded, we're at the end of the foot ailment portion now, and you could,
and we don't blame you at all for
yeah.
fast
In
forwarding.
fact, yeah. So in 1912,
Wait,
our guy
who's the
Billy,
topic again?
Dr. Scholl.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we got off topic. Billy Scholl, ladies
But
and
all
gentlemen.
that's important, knowing that there's a market here that wasn't being tapped into at all.
Oh, okay.
Because people have these ailments and they were just dealing with painful feet. You
Yeah.
can imagine most people
Suck it
probably
up.
had painful feet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, especially women, you think about the kind of shoes that people had to wear back then,
And no right and left.
and no right and left. Probably just it was just a part of life that when you walked around, your feet hurt.
Yeah.
1912, he founded a college of chiropody called Scholl College.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, podiatry wasn't really even seen as a proper medical profession until like the 1950s.
Wow.
So nobody really respected this stuff. Today, though, the Scholl College still exists, and 1/3 of foot doctors in the U.S. graduate from Scholl College. So
Wow.
that's not like it's not an insignificant number at all. But he started the idea of shoe fitting and foot care, and which, like I said, it was a market that did not exist. This guy would always carry a skeleton of a human foot with him. I mentioned he was a little strange.
Yeah.
Did I mention he was a
That's
little strange?
great on dates.
Billy Scholl, another one of our unmarried Zernep City residents.
Right.
If you look at the percentage of people in life that aren't married, we have a disproportionate percentage of them on as subjects.
On the show, yeah. Yeah. If you die unmarried, your odds of getting on our show are much higher.
So maybe that means once you get married, you're no longer interesting or no longer have the capacity to be interesting.
No
But
comment.
these are some weird folks. So he carried a skeleton of a human foot everywhere he went. And what he would do is he'd walk into a shoe store with no appointment, and he'd ask the manager. And he'd take out the skeleton and he would do the spiel about how the human foot has 28 bones in it. It's the most complicated and delicate part of the body and should be treated with respect. And then he would go on and hawk some of his products. His very first product was a thing called the foot easer, and it was an adjustable arch support. It was basically just um, two pieces of metal with a spring in the middle.
That sounds
But
painful.
it was like an adjustable arch support,
Okay.
right? And if you think about it, they didn't have those back then. So this was a game changer for people with arch problems, right?
Hey, if you're on Twitter, tag us with adjustable arch support.
He would have these sales people, and he would they were like correspondence courses that they would take that were like half educational about the foot, but also he would really make them like Salesforce. In fact, this was like the first company in America to have a sales force that we would recognize today, that like looks like, like a pharmaceutical company with their sales
So
reps.
almost like Mary Kay is today or Avon, like like Tupperware,
But they weren't selling door to door. They were selling it to shoe
shoe stores.
stores.
Okay.
You know what he called his salespeople?
Shoalies.
His foot soldiers.
That's
You like
good.
that?
That's good, yeah.
He was one of the first this was one of the first companies to have sales conventions where he'd bring everyone together and show motivational films
Yeah.
and sing songs that
Drink
were
a
like
lot,
pop songs that are popular songs at the time that like he would
change the
change
words. Yeah.
change the words to be about feet. And then they would have like these motivational phrases that a lot of sales teams have today, but
Yeah,
like
like a theme.
except no substitutes was one of theirs, you know.
Ooh. Ooh,
Um,
ooh, except no subs to boots.
oh, there you go. Did you know that Dr. Scholl's had the first self-service store where people took things off the shelf? They didn't have to get it from the counter, the guy at the counter. The prior to that, every time you walked into a store, you'd tell the druggist or whoever what you wanted, and they'd go back and get it. This was the first stores that had things off the counters that you could just grab and
Just
take up
off
to
the
the counter
shelf.
in any kind of walk of life. Like
Wow.
you could just grab things off the shelf. He also started the idea of national advertising campaigns like Foot Comfort Week. You know, you see all these things, you know, these
Oh.
National Hot Dog Day or
Yeah,
National
yeah.
Ice Cream Day, you know, and it's really like Baskin Robbins that comes up with National Ice Cream Day. He would design these things like he would have the girl with the most perfect foot contest, and everybody would send in. Now, he was probably well, who knows? I'm not going to talk about his motivation
A
for the
fetishist.
for that. But the idea that people started thinking about their feet and looking at their feet and demanding more from their feet and their shoe store and their comfort, that he was creating this need.
Yeah.
This need didn't exist because the cures for this stuff didn't exist.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, yeah, he called this sales company, he called it Practopedics. Practopedics.
Okay. So
And that
like
was
orthopedics and practicality
yeah,
combined?
probably, right? So, and like I said, it was education about the foot, it was sales. He globalized this company in 1910, which was also pretty new for kind of taking something and globalizing it. Canada, the UK, all over Europe, Egypt and Australia. We're talking 1910s that he's got this global company.
Yeah, way ahead of his time.
And it did well. This company did super well, even during tough times, even when the stock market was going down, even during the depression. People once you got to figure that once people see comfort in foot, they can't go back.
Yeah, you can't go from left and a right shoe to no left and right shoe, right? Once you've had it.
If you have bunions and then you don't, the Great Depression isn't going to go well. You're not going to say, well, I guess I got to go back to my bunions. You're going to find something else to cut, right?
Spend your money on bunion powder.
He had 400. I don't think it was powder. I think it was like pads.
Bunion pads.
Yeah. He had 400 stores, 6,000 employees. When he died, his company was one of the largest family owned businesses in the world.
Wow.
That was in 1968. So this was a huge company. Um, now they sold 11 years after he died, they sold to Schering Plough, 1979. Schering Plough is a pharmaceutical company that makes Claritin. They also owned that company owned Coppertone. Then they sold to Bayer, another pharmaceutical giant. 2019, this company was sold to a private equity firm for $585 million.
Wow.
So that was like 5 years ago, was sold for 585. And now they sell products relating to not only pain, but odor, skincare. They have
Oh, odor
skincare
eaters.
products.
Are odor eaters Dr. Scholl?
I
Or is
don't
that
think so. I think the
okay.
Odor Eaters is another company. But those types of things, right?
Yeah.
There's a spray, uh, skincare, athlete's foot, and Dr. Scholl's is big on running related issues too. I mean, you imagine that this guy was doing things with feet before running became a
Yeah,
popular
yeah.
activity for people to do or jogging. So they're all set with running related issues. Now, back to this issue about whether or not he was a real doctor. Kind of doesn't matter to us
Right.
today
Right.
because this company took off. But he supposedly attended this medical school called Harvey Medical School in 1901, 1900, 1901. His bio says that he went to Illinois Medical College, which later became Loyola of Chicago, and it said he got his MD in 1904. But then his bio also says he got an MD from Chicago Medical School in 1922. He would have been 40 years old then. And he just kind of put that stuff out there. Well, as early as 1914, the American Medical Association started getting questions about, okay, is this Dr. Scholl, is that a real doctor? And so they would do these investigations and they could never find him like in the yearbooks or these catalogs of
Mm.
students that they would have. And they would send a letter to Dr. Scholl, Billy Scholl, and they would say, hey, there's been some questions about whether or not you're a real doctor. Can you let us know?
Something strange was afoot.
I see what you did there, and I like it. He never answered the AMA.
Wow.
In 1935, so this is like 20 years of this is going back and forth. In 1935, the American Medical Association came out with a statement that says Billy Scholl is not a physician. He has posed as a medical doctor. Well, that time, these stores are everywhere. People are getting their bunions cured. They don't care whether or not he's a doctor. Now, even if he did have an MD from those schools, those colleges that I mentioned, Harvey Medical School, Illinois Medical College, they were considered to be very low reputation. In fact, the AMA probably wouldn't even consider those medical schools. They'd given grades of these schools and they were like in the C and D range. Even the place where he was said to have a degree from in 1940, Chicago Medical School, the that's a legit school, except for the guy who was giving licenses in the state of Illinois at the time was indicted for giving licenses to everybody and running what they call a license mill.
Ah.
Plus, he got his license in 1921, but he said he graduated in 1922. So that's shady as
Doesn't
well.
add up.
In Europe, they would not allow him to call himself Dr. Scholl. So in Europe, the stores and the products were always it wouldn't be Dr. Scholl's arch or foot ease or foot powder or whatever. It was William Scholl, American doctor, is all he was allowed to call himself.
Okay.
So that's how they
Is
know
that
him in
like
Europe.
what was that show? So and so medicine man or medicine woman? Doctor.
Yeah, Magnum PI.
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Quinn, medicine woman.
That's right. That's right.
William Scholl, American doctor, is what they knew him in Europe by. So it kind of doesn't matter to us today whether or not he was a real doctor because he's given pain relief and really took us into the 20th century and beyond with imagine walking around with foot pain all the time. I mean, that has to be awful. And these are over the counter type of things. You don't have to
Yeah.
go to a doctor to, if you have a bunion, you don't have to go to get a referral from a doctor. You can just go and take care of this stuff. So, on the whole of it, it's probably a pretty good thing that this guy existed. It's too bad that he kind of tried to put himself out there as a doctor because that, in a way,
Yeah.
that clouds his reputation. You
But
don't think
who
so?
knows? Who knows? Maybe the name was more of a marketing thing. But I guess at some point, you maybe should have said, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV," kinda, that sort of admission. I don't know. But I could see where in the early days of it, it seemed like having that legitimacy of the doctor's name in front of it made sense, and then after that, as you said, it didn't matter anymore. The products were proven, they filled a need, and you talk about somebody identifying a need and filling it, like, really well. That's pretty classic.
And he wasn't like some of these people that we talk about where he created a fake need and filled it. These
Right.
were real
This wasn't
problems that
snake
people were
oil.
having.
Yeah.
No, not at all. In a way, it was snake oil because he would present himself as a doctor, come in with the skeleton, hit you with the 28 bones, they're all delicate and all that kind of stuff. But, let's face it, at the time, the medical community hadn't really even caught up to the fact that the foot was something that could cause a lot of problems. I mean, just
Yeah.
think of spinal problems and back problems and the kind of things that can develop from foot pain. Medical community was not taking this seriously. This guy that may or may not have been a doctor was taking it seriously and actually was at the forefront of all this. So whether he was doing it to get rich or to save America from bad feet probably is immaterial.
Well, I'm sure he was getting it to doing it to get rich first, and then everything else that followed was a good or a bad thing. But God bless him. I agree with you. Probably I had very large feet as a young child. Like my feet grew really quickly. So I've always had a lot of problems with my feet and my ankles and stuff like that. And so knowing that they're well tended to, um, and almost maybe, as I said before, too well tended to, because I do feel like sometimes we would be a little better off going barefoot sometimes, and kind of letting our feet toughen up a little bit and have a little more of that um, reflexology. You're familiar with that, right? Kind
Mhm,
of the idea that every nerve in your foot is connected to a nerve in your
mhm.
body. And so that's one thing think we miss out from with too much padding, is that sometimes that stimulation of those nerves, which can help your sinuses, can help your nervous system, your heart, like all of those things supposedly are connected and can be healthier if you don't have your feet so well protected.
And that's easy if you're Johnny Appleseed and you're walking around in grass all day, but with the kind of, you know,
Yeah, in the concrete
for
jungle.
even driving in bare feet is a terrible idea, right? Like,
It's funny, I've done that a few times, and I always find it really interesting. Like,
I do not like it.
I kinda like the way the pedal feels on your foot.
No, I don't like I won't drive a car barefoot. I don't like getting on a ladder. Do you get on a ladder with bare feet?
I don't think I've ever done that. It's a lot
You
of
don't you
pressure.
always put on shoes when you're about to get on a ladder?
It's a lot of pressure on one part of your foot, right? It's like all that weight is compressed into, like, whatever the width of a ladder rung is, right? That's probably why
Yeah.
you don't like it.
Yeah. No, I don't feel like I feel like if I fell off a ladder because I had bare feet, it would be all on me.
What
And
about, like,
people
just
would
going
stand over me and go, "Well, why isn't he wearing shoes?"
idiot,
Yeah.
a Nostradumbass.
I wouldn't get on a roof without shoes.
Okay, okay, now you're just kind of saying, kind of obvious things.
Well, no. Obvious, you're talking about going through life with no shoes on.
No, I'm not talking about going through life. I'm talking about occasionally going with no shoes in grass and in sand and maybe swimming and such. But here's the thing: I first of all, I don't like flip flops. Do you wear flip flops? Like, and by that I mean the kind that goes between your big toe and the second toe.
No. We used to
Ugh.
call those thongs.
Thongs,
Remember
yeah, yeah.
that?
Remember
Yeah,
titties? Remember the shoes called titties?
Yeah.
They were kind of like a thong, but with more of an elastic thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate those too.
So I don't like those either. Um, I think I told you Jody and I have been going to yoga a lot recently, and we both wear socks in the yoga class, and we're like the only people wearing socks. But she's like kind of grossed out by the yoga floor in bare feet. Somehow the socks
Mm,
protect it.
mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah, I find that I tend to always want to wear shoes and socks and some sort of significant shoe. Here's another interesting thing too. I always think about if you're ever in a car accident or you ran out of gas or you were somewhere where you had to hike a while, not having shoes on in the car could be very detrimental on a cold day, on a hot day when the cement is hot. Um, and even just having like some sort of really flimsy flip flop kind of thing, you can't walk very far in that, right? It's not going to be very comfortable. So I tend to wear
Mhm.
shoes that I can get around in just in case I need to.
Yeah, that's true. I found that during COVID, where I was in the house a lot, wearing shoes felt weird because
Hmm.
I probably didn't wear shoes a lot in 2021.
Yeah.
It was like, remember shoes? I have to put on shoes.
Another dead end from Dirt Nap City.
Yeah,
Shoes.
exactly. I used to know somebody. I mean, I still know her. I won't out her, but she never wore shoes and would wear pants that were so long that you couldn't tell.
Huh.
And I mean, even to like business meetings, academic conferences, and used to get splinters all the time. Used to get, I remember finding out about this because we were walking across a railroad tracks one time, and she started complaining about splinters, and lo and behold, she wasn't wearing any. She was wearing bare feet.
So I think there is a certain I don't know if it's a physical ailment or I also know a guy from Oklahoma who's a very nice guy. I've met him at several conferences who doesn't wear shoes, and I feel like it's because he doesn't like the constrictive feeling of it. Like, it really bothers him to have that constriction, and so I think that's more than just a choice. I think that's something that's going on in somebody's brain or physically
Mm,
that
mm,
they have almost an aversion or a phobia of shoes.
weird.
I'm not sure well,
I'm not calling him weird.
it's a
It's
strange is a little less of a judgy term.
unconventional.
Unconventional, just like us. Well, hey, Alex, I do have to
Wait, you said
apologize to you.
did you say for what?
I forgot to get you a card for National Comfort Foot Week this year, and I'm really sorry.
Well, um, that's okay. It was Foot Comfort Week. When was that again?
Yeah, I missed it. And when is Foot Comfort Week?
I don't know. Are you Googling it?
No, but I
I
will.
can.
Okay.
Hold on.
What?
Foot.
Yeah, we should really encourage all our listeners out there to celebrate Foot Comfort Week. And the best way to celebrate Foot Comfort Week is to go barefoot on a walk while listening to Dirt Nap City on your Walkman.
Dude, you're not going to believe this, but I think we're in it now.
It's in March?
I think we're in it like now. I think it's this week.
Oh, well, okay then. You need to get out right now and listen to an episode of Dirt
Wait,
Nap City while you go for a
if you're
walk.
listening to this, it's already passed.
Ah,
Feet Week. They call it Feet Week now.
oh yeah. Not to be confused with Fleet Week in the Navy.
No, it's just, and now some of our listeners might think that pretty much everything we've been talking about today is gross.
Yeah, as
That
usual.
there's some people that just really hate thinking about, talking about, looking at feet. There's other people that are quite the opposite.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard that these days that many women will not want a picture taken if you can see their feet in them, just because there's creepers on the internet that are so into feet that they like any Facebook kind of post. They're into all that. You don't have to include any of this in the actual episode.
So if you're a foot fetish creeper, write to us, not at Dirt Nap City. Let us know what turns you on and send us a picture of your feet. Maybe we'll reply in kind.
I wonder if foot fetishists are into their own feet too, or if I don't know.
So have you ever had reflexology? You ever gone to one of those little places usually run by, an old couple?
I'm not sure I believe in it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure I believe in it.
Man, I've been to a couple of them. There's one not too far from us, and for Father's Day, my kids know I need a good foot rub from time to time. And so they paid for this old Asian man to rub my feet. So I walk up to the door outside of this little strip mall, and he's smoking a cigarette. We go in, and it's like, $50 for an hour of foot rubbing. But man, he gets up there. It hurts. There's, he's doing little pinch points and getting into the nerves and kind of rubbing with the tip of his thumb, getting in. I mean, it's like fascia, like he's getting into all the fascia. And then at the very end, he stands up and he takes his arms and he takes a towel and he kind of rubs it up your legs, up your shins, so that all the blood goes up it's crazy. I highly recommend it.
No, nothing about that sounded pleasurable to me. Right from the beginning.
A cigarette.
An old Asian man.
Smoking a
cigarette. You lost me at old Asian man.
All right, racist.
It went downhill from there. Yeah. Now, if it was an old white man, I'm all in.
Right.
And again, you don't have to include any of this in the episode, please. This is about a 25-minute episode, I think.
All right, well, let's get back on course.
All right. I think the legacy this guy left was that he changed the way companies sell things, changed the way we market things, the way we advertise. Some of the advertising tricks that he used we would recognize today as very 21st century type of advertising. He was a brilliant marketer, and his name still, I mean, I think worldwide, most people know, if they don't know Dr. Scholl, they at least know William Scholl, American doctor.
They call me Dr. Scholl. They call me Dr. Scholl.
Bye.
We went off the rails on that one.
No.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
You mad, bro?
No. No, I just think that's a good way to end it.